It doesn't mean you need to go and understand every AI tool. In fact, I encourage you not to do that because you're going to get burned out and overwhelmed. Take it up a level and say, how's AI being used in this industry now? How's it going to be used 5 years from now?
I predict that we'll probably get to a point that instead of you applying for jobs, I think people will come to you and recruit you for jobs more often. If companies are so overwhelmed with the number of applications, if companies can understand the profile of the ideal candidate for this role, can the tool go then find you and say, hey, there's like a 99% match that this is a really good fit for you, and predict the success in that role based on everything that they have.
There are a lot of areas where we're going to see contraction and we're going to see expansion. I think the two largest areas where we will see job growth is going to be
All right, welcome back to this episode of the How to Get a Job podcast. Today, we have an amazing topic and an amazing guest. We'll be talking about the future of work and how AI is impacting work. And to talk about this amazing topic, I have Elise Victor. She is a top voice in AI and humanities. Elise, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Daniel.
Elise, thank you for being here and for willing to kind of talk to the audience about what's going on with AI and the future of work. So before we kind of get started, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your background and the work that you do?
Great. Thank you. So I have a couple decade-long career in leadership. I've worked from everything in mergers and acquisitions and hedge funds to consulting for PricewaterhouseCoopers and deep technical expertise in healthcare. I pivoted over to healthcare in about 2010. So I have spent quite a bit of time. I've also been a professor at the University of North Texas, where I was focused on innovation in health informatics. And now what I'm working on is really developing my voice and platform to support responsible AI and the future of work and what that looks like with a very people-centered approach. Mm-hmm. So at this point, I own a home health agency. I also own a company that develops courses for universities. And then I do a lot of speaking and research on this topic. And so, I've got a lot of years of working across multiple industries, managing teams, and seeing a lot of what has happened in 25 years with tech transformations.
That's incredible. I have some questions about you because I was really researching this topic a lot for my career coaches community. So I host one of the largest career coaches community, and a lot of the worry is how is AI and how is the future of work going to look very different than it did. And I think we've gone through some phases, at least in the time that I've been in corporate since 2012, where first we got hit with COVID, and then that kind of changed work a little bit, a lot of work from home. Then we're seeing this shift to now kind of going back to the office or some hybrid workforce. Then OpenAI, kind of when they became really popular, changed the way that a lot of people did it. And now that's becoming really popular. So my concern now is there's some studies, and it's a lot of this is estimates, over 83 million jobs would be eliminated with AI, and then another 60 something million jobs would be created because of AI. But there would be a gap. About 14 million jobs will be disappearing in AI. That's something that I read in one article. But what are you seeing as someone that spends more time in the research and having a closer to the pulse, right? You're closer to what's going on in the field.
Yeah, so I am familiar with that number and kind of coming up with a net job deficit of about 15 million. And that's one number that I think was put out by the World Economic Forum. So we're talking about global jobs. There are other studies where you can look at, say, a 2-year projection, and I think it's Accenture suggested that maybe there would be a net positive of 500,000 jobs by 2027. So I share that to say, these are all projections. Yep. Now, I think what we can agree on is, yes, there will be a large number of jobs that are eliminated or transformed. And those are going to either be the new jobs created or what those old jobs have transformed into. So yes, I there are a lot of areas where we're going to see contraction and we're going to see expansion. I think the two largest areas where we will see job growth is going to be technology and again, this is from a kind of a global perspective, the green space. So agriculture, green farming, those those are probably the two biggest, with potentially about 30 million jobs within each of those that are growing. What I think most people have come to understand, when if you read the research, the jobs that are being eliminated are more clerical, administrative. So we're looking at bookkeepers. Huge one is call centers. AI, generative AI can do a lot of the calling and things like that. And it's also interesting to point out that there's been almost 2 million jobs that have been eliminated since the year 2000 just to automation. So I don't think we will see as many of those jobs, industrial jobs, contracting that we have, because it's already happened, right? That
Mhm.
has occurred. So yes, that's 100% something that I think is going to happen. I just would caution on the numbers, right? We really don't know what they'll look like, and every study is different. But I think the trends will definitely go that direction.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, I think it was a different podcast that was saying like back before a lot of the jobs, like for example, when farming, like when the majority of Americans were farmers, then they created the tractor, and then that became only 2% of Americans are now farmers. So a lot of the jobs that were eliminated were a lot of labor
Hmm.
jobs. But the AI revolution, or essentially all this AI, it's going to replace a lot of the thinking jobs, a lot of the roles that are not actually manual. So a lot of the safest jobs are like the plumbers, the electricians, a lot of the factory workers, very specialized factory work. And so a lot of the administrative tasks, you said bookkeepers, you were talking about call centers, a lot of those jobs that can be done anywhere in the world can now be eliminated. So I guess the question that I have for you as I think through that is, if someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, like, uh, I'm a little concerned because there's like a percentage of like 80 something, like 60 something percent. The majority of people are afraid of AI affecting their job. How should somebody be analyzing their job and understanding what is the skill sets that they need to continue to build to be able to protect themselves from their job being eliminated?
That's a great question. So I think depending on what their job is, if their job falls into that category of some of the bookkeeper, call center type jobs, I think what is most important right now for people to focus on is upskilling and considering what their job could evolve to in sort of this new world. So it isn't just, you work in this bookkeeper role and now it's gone and you have to become, a completely different role. Perhaps that could evolve. And I think the ways that I'm seeing people do that is to put a very big focus on some of the things that AI can't do. So what we're seeing, and I know I don't really love this term, but it's the soft skills, right? It's the critical thinking, the problem solving, the emotion, the EQ that AI really cannot replace, and thinking about how their role could evolve with what it is. And maybe it is a complete pivot into something else, but
Mm-hmm.
I think there will be opportunities. And with that, there are a lot of programs out there. Companies like Amazon, large companies, Unilever, are putting out programs. You can also go to Coursera. And if you can just gain sort of an understanding, I don't have a computer science background. I'm not technical in that aspect, but you can still gain sort of a foundational understanding and knowledge of AI, what's happening in the workforce and what will be valued without doing that. And I think there's tremendous number of free resources that are out there for people if they want to take advantage of it. So I think the biggest thing is a willingness to want to learn and put the time in, and so that you can sort of evolve yourself as things are changing around you.
Yeah. I, I was talking to a lot of my clients that are career coaches. So we work with a lot of career coaches. And I was telling them, because I actually do some advising at a AI company for career coaches. Now, I don't advise them on how to build the product, but more like how to make the product better for career coaches, right? Which is how we're supporting. And kind of like a lot of the conversations I have with them is that like AI won't completely replace career coaches, as an example, but career coaches that know how to use AI will replace career coaches. And a lot of the AI can do is do a lot of the repetitive, boring stuff, like tweaking a resume from one job to the other. But the way that you communicate your value, or how to identify the transferable skills that you had as a teacher to be able to go into a customer success manager role at a tech company, right? AI might not see that identification right away, but a career coach with more context, relationships, or even help them with their personal skills, soft skills, it's what's going to help them be successful. I wonder if you're seeing a similar thing, or are you seeing something completely different than what I'm noticing?
No, I am seeing that, and I'm seeing that the importance of transferable skills. And then I think what you hit upon was AI not necessarily being able to pick up on some of the context of
Mm-hmm.
things. And I think we see that across the board with AI. Let's just say, for example, with the generative AI, right? They they're really good at kind of generating new content, text and things like that, but may not understand the nuances. And, like you said, if there's transferable skills in one area and you can take that and apply it over here and what that really looks like, that's something that I don't think, you know, AI can do independent without a person. And this is really a lot of what I talk about. And I see this, you're asking about other areas. I think one of the big ones, a lot of controversy, is mental health.
Mm.
So, people, there's two extremes, right? Like you can just have a chat bot and that can serve as a kind of a mental health professional. And I understand the argument because we have a huge shortage. So, if there isn't anyone, then maybe that's better than, there's access to care. But there, I think the balanced approach of a mental health provider using AI to allow them to be more efficient, to create a customized, care plan, to do that while they're still, kind of driving, is what is the best approach. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that, but that's my opinion. I see that across different industries.
Yeah, I think the fear is like, even for example, like for me, it's maybe being a little bit vulnerable here with people who listening to this. I'm one of those people that like, I don't know if you ever watched the show Billions.
I haven't watched
Oh, okay.
it.
So in the show Billions, if you're watching this, there is a performance psychologist named Wendy Rhodes, and I don't necessarily like the like I try better work. I don't know. So, anyways, long story short, I went on ChatGPT and I said, "Can you help create a GPT with the personality of Wendy Rhodes?" And it prompts me like if I'm speaking to this, like actually it's a TV character. It's not even based on a real person. And the GPT is only getting better and better at like having conversations with me. Now, it's again, I at the end of the day, there is a level of me knowing that I am not speaking to a human where I don't take that advice as seriously as if it came if there was an actual performance psychologist. But I do think it's extremely helpful for me. And I guess like I think about how much more AI continues to evolve year after year. And to me, part of me, I'm very optimistic. I'm like 51, really excited and optimistic. And then 49, I'm like, are we going to turn like the people in Wally where we're just sitting on these chairs and the controller and we're not doing anything because the computers and the AIs do everything?
Right, right. No, I mean, I agree. And I think there are studies that show short term, efficacy of using AI and chatbots for mental health. I think we just don't know what the long term is.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. If you're using it, but you have the awareness that it's like, okay, I created the GPT, and and it's just sort of, where to take it seriously and that there's blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that everybody does have that awareness. And so I think that's where there are some risks, right? We've all kind of heard the bad stories of different chatbots, and kind of, I don't know if you know of that story in Florida of the teen boy that so he was using a chatbot that was created, actually it's in another country, but essentially really got emotionally involved with the chatbot. And I know we're kind of veering off from
Yeah.
mental health, but more talking about chatbots. And ultimately, he was a minor. The mom didn't realize the extent to which that was happening, and ultimately, it encouraged him to take his own life, which he did. So there are, and I'm not mentioning the company. I don't really want to get involved,
Yeah.
but people can probably easily find that online. There's just things that we have to be careful of, and that are cautionary when we balance that. So I think there's the good and the bad, right? And I think that's kind of what we have to look at as the price of progress. I think, you're mentioning farm equipment or the printing press or all of these things as we've evolved, right? There's always a price of progress that happens. And I think part of the problem today is that, the media will pick up bits and pieces of things without a whole lot of all of the information. And then people maybe aren't necessarily fully understanding what that means and just kind of grabbing headlines. Um, and so I think that's the challenge, because we've got a really polarized, extreme view of AI is horrible and it's going to ruin everything. And like you said, this kind of dystopian view of the future. And then the other side where it's going to solve everyone's problems and everything's going to be efficient. We're all going to be able to use our minds creatively now because AI is doing the hard work. And I don't agree with either of those. I take more of a balanced approach, but yeah.
What do you think the future of work looks like 24 months from now? Or it doesn't
24
even need to be
months.
24 months, right? It could be like, what do you think in the short term, like, how different do you think the future of work looks like than it is today? What are some of the
I
trends that we're seeing?
Yeah, I think it looks very different. I would say 24 months to 5 years, I think we will see a lot of these kind of data entry, call service jobs. They will be eliminated. I think we will see AI handling those functions. I think once things kind of level out and companies enterprise wide truly adopt AI for, large use cases, we're going to see that really overseen by people, which is why I stress the importance of people being familiar with AI. Like I said, you don't need to be a computer scientist, but just kind of understand what are those roles going to look like when AI is taking all of those phone calls, and maybe 80% are handled by AI and 20% are escalated to a human. Then you've got to be a really great human that can take an upset customer and go take them through the process of resolving their problem. And that ties right back to, problem solving, EQ, critical thinking. Those are the things that, AI is going to handle some of those other things. And then the person's going to need to do that and oversee it. I think that's across the board.
What I think it's interesting is that I think that there's going to be companies that use AI for a lot of things, and then there's going to be other companies that don't as much. And I think it's part of it. I think there's going to be a consumer preference behind it. Like, I don't know, for me personally speaking, I think I am willing to pay a little bit more to know that I'm speaking to a human, even though I use AI a lot to even talk about like talking about windy roads. And I'll give an example. And then I think others will don't want it. They're more introverted in a sense, or rather avoid speaking to a human and speak to a AI that might be more logical and will get a more direct answer. And to me, this is really weird. It's the first time. I'm not big at eating fast food, but I had picked up my mom from the airport. And she's like, "Hey, I'm really hungry. Can you stop at Wendy's or stop at any fast food on the way home?" And we stopped at Wendy's, and it was the first time that I ever go through a drive-through and I didn't speak to a human. That I actually just spoke to like Siri or talking to Alexa, and like you would be like, it would be like, "Hey, welcome to Wendy's," well, and then you would be like, "I want a number five," and they'll like repeat it right after just to make sure they got the right order. And it was really weird. And then we got the food, and then for me in my head, I'm thinking, I think I'd much rather go to, if I knew Wendy's, all of them were like this. I think I'd much rather go somewhere else to speak to a human. Like I miss the interaction. And I was sharing that with my team, and my team said, "Really? I would actually go straight to Wendy's because I don't want to talk to anybody else." I wonder if you're seeing similar things like that, where like it's becoming like a strategy for a company to say, "I'm just going to automate everything," or someone like, "I'm going to try to humanize everything."
I haven't seen that approach, or of just one or the other.
Yeah.
I in fact, I think, or like either of these
Yeah.
extremes. I mean, there's companies that really want to implement a lot of AI technologies, and they're aggressive in doing that. But I really haven't heard a company say, "Hey, we want all AI,"
Yeah.
because I think there's a big push on really understanding what humans need to do and how a human in the loop does provide value. What I think I see a lot is companies saying everybody else is adopting AI, we have to do it,
Hmm.
versus we have this problem and maybe AI is the solution, versus, or maybe AI is not, right? But I just spoke with the CEO about a month ago, healthcare company, and he wanted me to help him, as he said, listen, I'm getting investors, and here's the thing, everybody just wants to see AI. And I'm like, that's not the reason to implement AI, right? It is identifying the problem and if AI is the right solution for it. So I
Mm.
think that's a mistake that we see a lot of companies. Oh, I just need to say that I use AI. That is not setting, an organization up for long-term success. And it's interesting on the Wendy's thing. I If it's accurate, I'd be perfectly fine with that. I don't necessarily need the human to do it. I mean,
Yep.
it's because you're already in a drive-through. But I
Yep.
wonder if that's more of a generational thing. Like the younger people may want more of the automation versus dealing with people, and maybe people that are slightly older would prefer the human interaction. I don't know. I know there's a lot of younger people that don't necessarily want to even make customer service calls and talk with people.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
You know what's interesting is that my team is younger than I am, and so
Okay.
that makes a lot of sense. I guess for me is thinking about like at what point does it seem like it goes too far and the pendulum starts to swing in a sense of like I think about like I think about it from a marketer's point of view, and like marketers ruin everything, right? Because if a marketer knows something works and then everyone does it, it's like, and so if AI is now sending more emails, more cold emails, and we get more junk emails, this email becomes less powerful because people just ignore all emails, or there's more calls on your phone that are all junk mail because it's all AI calling your phone versus actually somebody trying to call you from a different country trying to sell you something. So to me, like that's my fear, or like what I think a lot about is like, how is AI? How are marketers going to use AI to ruin something, or because, or even think about like the application process. I see all these companies that are like using AI to apply for people. So about a couple of years ago, there was a study that says for every job posting, the average company gets 250 applicants. So a Google will get thousands, a smaller company might get 20. It averages out to like 250 applicants. If you can use a tool that uses AI to apply for you, those companies are now the average might go to thousands or even 10,000 applicants, right? Because they can apply to hundreds of jobs every single day, if not thousands of jobs every single day. Well, how does the company then react to that, right? Like they're going to have to use AI to also filter the thousands of applicants because it's impossible to have a recruiter or a coordinator or any like to review manually every resume. What have you seen AI affect the way that companies are receiving applications, or even are people using it to apply?
Um, I don't have firsthand experience in terms of the kind of hiring process, other than knowing that there are AI tools that are great for ATS systems, and doing that. I know what I have experienced. I can share is the use of AI for interviewing. So.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know if you've encountered any of that, but yeah, just on the well, let me address what you're saying with all of the information. I think that is a problem, not just in interviewing. That there's going to be massive information going both ways with whatever. I don't know if it's marketers per se, but yes, there that is a problem. Like email, spam, all of that stuff, right? Um, I guess AI is the problem and the solution in that. I don't know those are my thoughts on that. But I will say I have experienced using an AI interview tool. I don't know if you've ever done that, but I know someone that owns a company, and I wanted to test it out. And I sat through a 30-minute interview. So he gave me access, and I was able to develop all of the questions myself. And then I sent the interview to myself, and I had the AI interview me, and it was pretty remarkable what it was able to pick up in terms of how I guess emotionally invested I was in answering the question, how it seemed like I knew the content or did not, or the my emotions as and this was all part of the analysis. So it sent me a full report on every question. And I think companies are going to use that. I actually am going to start teaching at a new university, and part of their process, and they're very innovative, was to put me through an AI interview. It was structured differently than the one that I'd taken of my friends, but I did it. And I will tell you, at first when I received it, I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do an AI interview. So I think a couple of things. I think the candidates that are going to take that step and do that, because I think there's going to be a whole lot of people that are just like, I don't want to do that. So you're already in an advantage if you do that, right? Let's get comfortable with that if the companies are putting that out there, right? If I guess if that's aligned with your values and you want to work for that organization, I would suggest that people do that. So I did it. It was fine. Moved on, and I was offered the teaching role. But I think there's good and bad with that, because you can have these systems that will score you, weed you out, and maybe that that's not correct, right? Maybe you would have been a good fit for the job. So I think, again, we're going to just have to work through a lot of these kinks, right?
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is remarkable some of the tech that's out there, like interviewing, that can tell your tonality, the way you answer, your emotion, can look at your face expressions and kind of see if you're lying or not, or if, like, there's just so many things that you can do. I think that's really interesting. I think, to me, uh, what I some of the things that I do fear in that side is not so much the interview process or anything like that. I fear is how much candidates, like, if a tool can go and not just do a lot of companies do background checks, but they'll do a background check and they're like, do you have any criminal, like a regular traditional background check. But there's also tools now that can just scrape your data from the internet and see, like, anything that you've ever done, posted, said on a podcast, on a YouTube, anything, right? You're now being judged by that. How much of that now applies that maybe what you said 15 years ago, you're now going to be held accountable when you're looking for a job, because there is now tools out there that can do that. So I think a lot about that. Like, I just think about how everything will change in all aspects of the interview. And I feel like, to me, the logical solution, I guess not the logical solution. I think if I solve this, then this would be awesome. I don't know that I can solve this, but I think we'll get to a point. I predict that we'll probably get to a point that instead of you applying for jobs, I think people will come to you and recruit you for jobs more often than other way around. If companies are so overwhelmed with the number of applications, if companies can understand the profile of the ideal candidate for this role, can the tool go then find you and say, hey, there's like a 99% match that this is a really good fit for you, and predict the success in that role based on everything that they have, all the information that they have around you, just like Meta and Google can target you with such accuracy in the ads. And that, to me, is a little bit scary, and I don't know how I feel about it. But yeah.
I mean, I think that's a great idea. I think, if you're thinking about kind of the hiring process, I've gone through it, and it's a lot of time. You go through the candidates. You've got to take time out of your whatever you're doing is your core job, and you're interviewing, and you're going back and forth. And if you had a way to really bring in the top 5 potential candidates that are going to, you know, look like success in this role, you're saving a lot of time. I mean, I think that's actually brilliant. I think this technology and people kind of scraping and finding out every single thing that anyone's ever done has been happening for a while. I don't think that's going to change, but I think it's the world we live in.
Yeah.
I have kids. I tell them anything you ever put online or send to anyone, it's there. It's permanent. It's your digital footprint. So don't ever do something or say something that you wouldn't want to say in front of your coach, your teacher, your principal, because it can come back and haunt you, right?
Yeah.
But I love that idea. I mean, this is ties right into people really developing their LinkedIn or their professional presence online, because I think a lot of jobs are found through your network, through your contacts, and that's been true for years, right?
Yeah. So I think the thing, I think the problem is, I think that the process of getting a job is a little bit broken, because it makes it feel like the companies have all the leverage, but actually a really good employee or a really good worker has a lot of leverage, but it doesn't feel like that way when you're applying, right? And I think a lot of it also is that a lot of people could be very good at interviewing and really bad at the job, or vice versa. You could be really good at the job and really bad interviewing. Like, it reminds me of a conversation I was having with one of my best friend's mom, who's been working at the same company for almost 30 years, and she hasn't gotten a new role in like 6 7 years. And she tells me it's because she's a terrible interviewer. That every time she goes to the interview, she gets very nervous about it. And she goes like, I just wish I would get judged more on the work that I do for the last 29 years versus the way I interview for 1 or 2 hours. And I think ultimately when I put myself as a business owner, and have had to hire dozens of people for my business, I think a lot about like, when I'm looking at hiring as an investment, I'm looking at somebody with high potential with minimizing the risk. And I think that's what data does really well. And I think that that's where AI can do a lot of help in helping make better connections. And it's not just that the company wins and we minimize the risk of hiring the wrong person, but also is making sure that we're bringing in the right person to the role, right? And I think that the way that it works now, you're just applying, and you're one of 100, and you're applying through thousands. And I just think that the matching is just, that's it's not optimal. And I think that's where there's an opportunity where I think AI can be very helpful to do that.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. And even, I would emphasize candidates that are looking too is thinking sort of outside of just, sending their application and figuring out how they can differentiate themselves. Find out who the hiring person is. Reach out to them on LinkedIn. I mean, the reality is if they have 100 resumes to go through, there could be really great qualified people that don't even get a look because maybe that person goes through 50 and they're like, okay, I'm just going to take these first 10. I don't have time to look at the other 50. And that's just what happens, right? So I think candidates in this sort of new world and future of work are going to have to be creative. They're going to think outside the box. They're the ones that will, ensure that they're learning what they need to learn, figuring out how to upskill or find out what is transferable and in demand and how do they frame that, right? So that it is useful and that they can bring value to a company and to be able to stand out in a sea of 100 or 1,000 resumes. That's important. That's incredibly important. People are all inundated with information. They don't have time. And, maybe you reach out to the hiring person and you are the qualified person. They're going to say, oh, okay, well, let me pull that resume. It can be just, something small like that.
How important would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, or however you want to categorize it, the importance of building a personal brand for the future of work?
I think it's incredibly important. If it's a 10. If there are 10 things
Yeah.
that you need to do for the future of work, that is on the list. And you need to build that brand and you need to frame it in a way that highlights your skills that are relevant for 2030 and beyond, and start thinking about what those are specifically in your industry. And even, industry wide, having, just a foundational understanding of AI is critical. How, whatever it is you work in healthcare, logistics, how's AI being used in healthcare and logistics? It doesn't mean you need to go and understand every AI tool. In fact, I encourage you not to do that because you're going to get burned out and overwhelmed.
Yeah.
Take it up a level and say, how's AI being used in this industry now? How's it going to be used 5 years from now? And what are the issues with it? I mean, if you can just articulate that, you're probably putting yourself ahead of 80% of the other people in your industry. Because I've even talked to C-level people that are saying, gosh, I just need to understand AI. I don't. And they try to figure out every tool. And I'm like, you work in fintech and you don't need to understand every tool in Canva and, Claude and every AI model. You need to know, how is fintech using AI today, generative AI, other forms of AI, what's that doing? How is that transforming your industry? And what does that look like for the future? So banking, just the example I'm using, right? We're going to see a lot of banking jobs constrict. And they're going they're going to go away, right? Tellers, all of that stuff. So how does, what does that look like? What does that look like for those people in those roles? What are the companies, big players out there doing to upskill and reskill their own workforces? So there's a lot of companies that are investing in programs within their own organizations to upskill, even outside of their organizations. I know Amazon is one of them that has put out free programs to help people learn, right? So we have to just kind of take it up a level and think about what's really going on, and then consider what your role is in that and what that might look like. So I kind of went off course with the brand, but 100% your personal brand, identifying that, being clear about what that is, and showing what that value is to prospective employers is incredibly important.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. Elise, if people want to learn more about what you do, or they want to like get connect with you, what would be the best way to do and connect with you?
They can find me on LinkedIn under Elise Victor. They can also go to elisevictor.com. The website is actually under construction, but it will be finished probably within a couple weeks. And I will also have some resources for future of work on there, so people can also find that. I do post daily on LinkedIn, though, and I put a lot of this information and content out there. So come connect with me, find me on LinkedIn, and you'll get resources there as well.
Amazing. We'll put a link to your website and your LinkedIn here as well. Elise, thank you so much for being here, sharing your knowledge with us. If you are listening to this, if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe and share with a friend. Thank you all for watching, and then see you guys on the next episode. Bye, everyone.